All my Pisces friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your March 2025 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Pisces, I'm referring to Pisces rising as the first house and dictating the landscape of the chart. If you don't know your rising sign, you'll want to go to any one of the free birth calculators on the internet. You just need your exact time of birth and location to determine that information. If you are a Pisces moon or a Pisces sun, this video is still applicable to you, but the house structure will be different. When I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. March is a big month. We start eclipse season. We have a retrograde with Mercury and Venus. They're retrograding from your second house into your first house. So there's a concentration of energy there. Neptune will leave its domicile of your first house and move into your second house for just a minute before it retrogrades back into your first house. There's so much going on. Let's jump in and pull the chart up. So here you can see you have Neptune, Mercury, Saturn, the North Node, and the Sun all in your first house. We see Venus is here at 10 degrees of Aries in your second house. She is technically in detriment in your second house. And yet in these modern times, I don't know if I agree with that as much. Venus is very much a self-actualized energy representing the feminine, the receptive, the creative, the gestative energy. So here, as she stations to go retrograde on the 2nd, she's really thinking about her own individuality, about using her skills, about creating potentially an entrepreneurship. We see the Aries energy is very entrepreneurial and adventuresome. And we see that she is going to, okay, let me back up. In detriment, she feels a little uncomfortable because she tends to get very passionate about things, and Venus can be very assertive in Aries. This is something that in ancient times was not really appreciated with the feminine dynamic. But here, I think this really represents a feminine energy versus a female energy. So here we're being brave in our willingness to use our skills and to birth them into something that could create money. We're going to move to the 3rd now. And when we get to the 3rd, we see that Mercury has moved into Aries and Venus has gone retrograde. Mercury is going to catch up to Venus in about a week or so, and they're going to travel together in retrograde back into Pisces. So we have a lot of thoughts about what we want to create, about what we have created, about how our confidence was formed. There could be a lot of thoughts for the Pisces energy of repressed anger or repressed feelings of resentment. The 0 degree of Aries is a powerful energy for co-creation, as it is the literally the 1st degree of the Zodiac, where the soul is entering the physical experience. So I think that this in Mercury, still in conjunction with Neptune, is bringing thoughts of creativity, of whether or not I've been escaping my greatness or whether or not I've been claiming it. The challenge with the Pisces energy is it can feel very invisible. You'll notice Pisces, people with a first house Pisces often are small or smaller or slight. They'll be thinner or maybe even not quite as tall. I'm not saying they can't be tall, but because Pisces rules sort of this feeling of invisibility, you can see that in the physical structure of a Pisces. So you might check that out. I'm not that big. So my Aries is in the 12th house of Pisces, and I think that it contributes to that. But anyway, I digress. Let's move to the 11th, where we are going to see Mercury direct, Venus retrograde at 8 degrees. This is a money degree. This is a scorpionic degree. This is, to me, where your thoughts very much can be about, again, how do I move my story forward? Am I capable of moving my story forward? Will I have the resources to move my story forward? I think that this is important, especially because of Saturn's transit through your first house and Saturn's conjunction with the sun. In 2 days, we will see the first eclipse of the year. That's going to be a full moon in Virgo on the first eclipse on the Pisces Virgo axis that we've experienced in 18 years or so. About a year and a half through each sign, 12 years around the Zodiac, plus 6, yeah, about 18 years. So here, what's happening is an illumination of a history that's potentially felt restrictive, a potential feeling limited, repressed, even invisible, and then wanting to step out from underneath all of that and to express myself more authentically. Not just creatively, but from a spiritual sort of a soul's representation. When I think of the Pisces energy, I recently saw a couple of Grimes videos. She's a Canadian artist, singer, songwriter, and she's very Piscean in how she creates. I thought that was a great representation, maybe even a little bit more ethereal than we can relate to, some of us, but it's very Piscean. And the reason I bring this up is because the eclipse that's coming up in the next few days could bring a revelation to where you've not allowed yourself your full expansion of your creativity, where somehow Saturn has illuminated where you have restricted yourself more out of duty and obligation than out of desire. And now Saturn is asking you to build a strong relationship and a strong bridge with your creativity, and to be willing to endure the challenge of unraveling any limitations. And that's evidenced through the retrograde. Let's go to the 13th, where we'll see the first eclipse at 11:54 p.m. This, I will do a separate video on it, but it's going to be in your 7th house of peace and harmony and cooperation with others. It's a house of partnership. It's a house of professional, contractual partnerships, marriage partnerships. But there's some illumination, there's some release of an emotional enslavement of something. And it could be that I'm not perfect enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not brilliant enough. There could be a lack in something. We see that Saturn is conjunct the sun. The sun and the moon are in their fullest, brightest phase, offering an illumination. And this illumination could very well be how you are overly critical of the self, overly critical of your endeavors, or overly critical of your participation in things. It feels very self-oriented, and I think that's because of Venus and Mercury traveling through the house of your skills and your voice, your speaking your perspective. So I think this is going to be really, I think this is going to be a series of revelations over the next few months, because again, we're going to see a lot of activity in your first and second house for the spring of 2025. And by the way, happy birthday, if it happens to be your birthday. On the 15th, Mercury will join Venus in its retrograde. And it's retrograding here at 9 degrees. We see they're 6 degrees apart, and they're going to continue to travel very closely together. I think of this as sort of a galactic summit. And while some of the planets are not exactly in the same house, I feel like they're on the same block. And you can hear the neighbors talking. So this is pretty big. Let's go now. On the 19th, the sun will be conjunct Neptune at 29 degrees. And then on the 20th, the sun will enter Aries. The sun is exalted in Aries, so it always feels very powerful and very strong. But on the 22nd, what we're going to see is a conjunction with Venus at 2 degrees. And Venus is starting to be in conjunction as she retrogrades with the world axis, that 0 degree of Aries. So she's really very much starting to think about the ego, thinking about, am I edging God out by holding myself small, or am I excited about God's opportunities? The ego is a essential part of manifestation in the physical, and yet oftentimes the ego is villainized for its input, because the ego is the part of us that is ruled by fear in many ways. It's ruled by our lack. And I think the eclipse that we had just a week earlier illuminated something for you where you potentially have been self-critical or potentially been self-deprecating in some way. And now I think that there's an opportunity to further identify that. Now, technically, all planets that come into a conjunction with the sun are combust. The sun eclipses them in some way. But because I think that Venus and Mercury roll so closely to the sun, and they neither have moons scientifically, that their alignment, their conjunction with the sun has more illumination than it does an outshining. And I think that's further evidenced at this time by the retrograde. All right, so now we go a couple days later and we see that Mercury's having the same conjunction with the sun. Now, again, the sun is very strong in Aries, and I think the strength of the sun is compelling these two planets to step up their game, and that's part of the retrograde. Step up your thoughts about how you want to individualize yourself. Be brave about your talents and your skills. Be willing to create with using your own personal perspective and voice. And I want to also offer that this planetary configuration cannot happen again for 165 years because Neptune will not be back in its rulership for that amount of time. So the idea of a conjunction between Neptune, Mercury, Saturn, all in Pisces, it's just something we want to take great advantage of. And the North Node is going to compel us to really be aware of our being energy. What is our attitude, our disposition, our thoughts about the things we are endeavoring? And as we identify any critical energies or any, lack of perfection that would block us, we can use that as a point of information to be brave and move the story forward. This very much feels about being willing to birth something creative and not escaping my creativity or giving my power away through my empathy and compassion to others who are not appreciative or maybe even deserving of your compassion. Let's go to the 27th when Venus will re-enter her exaltation. And, Venus just loves to be in your first house. She just loves to sit back and write songs and listen to poetry and good music and dance and sway. And Neptune is happy to join her. The North Node is encouraging that. And at the same time, the South Node is opposing it with responsibility and duty. And you get to rewrite what you are responsible and dutiful to, because if it's an energy that is sucking you dry, that is opposing your happiness, this galactic grouping, this planetary summit in the beginnings of the first and second house, or the beginnings of the second house dominating your first house, very much are offering you something fabulous, but you've got to claim it. You've got to come out of the dark in some ways, come out of the isolation. But that isolation is not about coming out to other people. This is all about the self right now. These first two houses are about the discovery of the self and the skills and your perception and speaking your perception and moving your body around and discovering its power and its potentials. We will have a new moon partial solar eclipse on the 29th in Aries. This is going to be at 3:58 a.m. Pacific time. And this is really where you plant the seeds in the darkest phase of the moon, not in hope, but in faith. And faith is an interactive energy where you are participating regularly. And that is further evidenced by Saturn in your first house at 24 degrees, wanting you to continue to create beyond what you see in the physical, to transcend, to trust an inner knowing. We see this beautiful 0-degree Mercury as it's about to re-enter Pisces is I think, in a sequence with Neptune at 29. Venus at 28, the North Node at 27. There's something happening here during this eclipse. And as you plant the seeds in awareness and then you nurture, let's say you want to birth, a singing career, a writing career, a film career, anything creative. You want to overcome addiction. This is your willingness to every day connect with spirit and realize that what you're doing is a loving act. It's not an act of restriction or to stop yourself from doing something to escape, but rather stepping into a vibration of being visible. Because addiction is just one big escape from our sadness. All right, now we see the pivotal the next day. Let me go back to 12 p.m. On the 29th, on the 30th, and we will see Neptune come into that 0 degree of Aries. I really think that this is something that feels very obvious, because here we have water moving into fire, and that can create steam. So initially there can be some things kicked up, and I think that could be further evidenced by the retrograde that we see. Again, here we have 0, 20, 29, 28, 27. The planets have changed their configuration, but there's still something sequential as we review where we've been, what we think, the people we hang out with. That's all Mercury. Venus, my skills, my willingness to be dreamy and to know that the excitement of my dreams actually brings in the components from the universe to experience those dreams. And then Mars's trine to Saturn is really asking me to be brave and to continue to trust something I cannot see with my eyes. Mars is in detriment here in your 5th house, but Mars is also in a good aspect to Saturn. And I think that this is important because Mars is exalted in Saturn's house of Capricorn. So Mars is saying, I'm willing to be brave and enduring to continue to pioneer through this emotional, creative process in order to experience my own greatness. And I think for my Pisces, this is something that's going to go on for you throughout 2025, because Saturn is going to continue to ask you to be diligent and responsible and dutiful to yourself, to look at what you need, to be compassionate, to be empathetic, to be authentic to the self. And as you do that, the other components will fall into place, because when Jupiter moves into your 5th house of creativity and of romance, you could experience some very expansive and abundant energies that are very, very enjoyable. And that will happen in June of 2025. So the epiphanies, the revelations, the ideas that you're having right now are gestating and will be birthed throughout this coming year. And Jupiter will spend a year in your 5th house, which is a very, very favorable place for Jupiter to be. So it's an exciting time for you. Again, there will be some revelations that might be more challenging at some level, because sometimes when we realize that we've been ignoring our greatness, there can be a little sense of melancholy attached to that, but everything happens in its divine timing. And as you recognize that, you'll also recognize the power of your own evolution. And that evolution comes from your awareness and your intention. All right, my Pisces, that's it for March. Again, my name is Teri Hunter. I'm intuitive astrologer. If you'd like to book a reading with me, I am available. My information is below. Please join me Wednesday afternoons at 4 p.m. Pacific time. This is where I do tarot cards based on your specific questions. You just write your question in the chat. We take them in order. If you decide you'd like to donate through Super Chat or through Super Thanks, you move to the top of the class. There are video links at the end of this video here. You can check out the Venus Mercury retrograde and some of my other videos. Thank you so much. Please like, please subscribe, please share, and I'll see you in April. Have a great March and happy birthday.